guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new IDontWorkHereLady content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled I Don't Work Here but I'll Ask For You Anyway. I am sure most I don't work here situations are polite and don't end in some Karen being arrested. For example, I once worked in central London for a famous insurer, and in those days you had to wear a shirt, tie, and business suit. At lunchtime, I generally popped over to the local less than famous countrywide shop greater than to grab some sort of meal deal. When getting only one or two items, I don't use a basket, so it was not surprising that I could be mistaken for a manager. On one occasion, a man came up to me and asked where the cheese was. I said, "Well, I don't work here so I'm not certain, but the milk is in that corner so I'm guessing cheese will be nearby." The man said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were the manager." Me, "It's okay, understandable mistake, I hope you found your cheese." No drama, cheese was where I'd guessed it would be, so the man gets his cheese. Case closed. But this story is about yours truly, me, getting it wrong. A few years ago, I was in a city, also world famous but often for the wrong reasons, not the same one as my earlier entitled People story, but not too far away from it, with a friend. We were both 50-ish. We were there for a couple of beers, probably a bite, then cocktails at some fancy rooftop bar. This was our usual mo. This must have been spring or autumn because it had started getting dark around 6 or 7 p.m. Our first port of call was a bar near the bus station which was by the river, and has a quite long, narrow balcony quite literally almost touching the river. We'd grabbed a couple of beers, probably Lef Brun or some other fancy Belgian beer they have on tap, not quite sure it was a few years ago, and grabbed a table on said balcony. Not long afterwards, a couple of blokes, 30-ish probably, sat at the next table and a third fiddled, also about 30-ish, with the door locks you get on the tops and bottoms of doors, not the things for which you need a key, so he could fasten the doors to the balcony open. He said to the two blokes who were sitting down, "I'll just be a minute," and was just turning back to inside when I got his attention and asked, "Could you turn the outside lights on for us, please?" I do literally say please and thank you to serving staff at all times. My parents brought me up properly. The bloke opening the doors laughed and said, "I don't work here." Me, "Oh sorry. I thought you did," and started to get up to go in myself. The bloke waved me back to my seat and carried on, "It's all right. I know the barman, I'll ask him for you," and went back inside. 30 seconds later, the lights came on. 5 minutes later the bloke came back outside with beers for himself and his friends. When he'd settled, I was still a bit embarrassed, said thank you for getting the lights turned on, and explained, "Sorry, the way you opened the doors and your manner made me think you were the bar manager." He said, "Don't worry, it's understandable." And his friends started ribbing him, "Are you sure you should be drinking on the job?" My friend ribbed me, "What a plonker," etc. Anyway, the five of us had a good, friendly chat and a couple of beers apiece over the space of an hour or so before we moved on to a well-known eatery, and then some old fashions in some overpriced, rooftop bar. Nobody got angry, nobody was arrested, and the beer and banter flowed. Moral of the story? Be polite, and don't be a plonker. The next story is titled Security. She's a theft. This happened few days back where I was on my off day, and since I got my cash incentives for Chinese New Year from my company, I decided to get some shirts from Uniqlo as they have the line series clothing, and I had gotten 2 from a store nearby. As there is another outlet few stops away, I sort of went there to see if there is any other designs that I can get my hands on. Plus I was wearing their Peanuts shirt that I brought a year ago. So I walked in with this Uniqlo paper bag and Karen started to ask, "Are you trying to steal things with uniform?" I ignored and she follows me all around. Before I exit, she screams at me to stops me and telling the mall security that I have stolen the shirts with the barriers not beeping. Screams at me telling me I am not professional as a staff of Uniqlo and not cool to steal those shirts while on shift. I laughed and thankfully I did keep my receipt cause I knew this might happens. I showed the receipt to the staffs of Uniqlo and security, but Karen insisted I stolen the clothes while working there. Of course I was released knowingly I am just shopping, but Karen starts to scream at security for being incompetent while I walk off. The next story is titled I Am the Manager, on a different company though. As an avid reader and listener, podcast on Spotify, of this subreddit, I never knew that this would happen to me as our country's culture, a tropical country in Southeast Asia, tends to lean on the conservative and hospitality side. First, a brief background about my occupation. Me, 30M, and my dad owns a small engineering business which specializes on repairs, fabrication, supply of mechanical, electrical, and metalworks alike. Most of our clients are food manufacturing plants within the province. Anyway, it's a typical Thursday morning when a client called me to pick up a machine for repairs. When I arrived at the plant, I was asked by the security to wait outside the loading bay as they page the engineer that is assigned with the said machine. While waiting for the supervisor, I heard a loud hey from a guy, in his late 50s to early 60s maybe, who was also at the loading bay. I paid no attention to him as I knew he was a contractor, supplier just like me and thought that he was just shouting at the guys working there. He gets my attention by shouting hey kid. So I approached him and asked what's your problem. He was somehow startled by my disinterested tone and asked me that why I wasn't doing my job. I told him I don't work here. I was waiting. He shouted, kid, aren't you ashamed that you're just standing right there while your coworkers are unloading these boxes? Again, I reiterated that I don't work here. Well, to be fair, I think he mistook me as one of the workers, as contractual employees there doesn't have uniforms and only direct hires, regular employees do. I, for one, was wearing loose old shirt with faded prints and baggy pants. 100% I'll get in trouble with the fashion police, since it's very comfy and being on a tropical country, the climate tends to get warm and humid even in February. Sweaty back, armpits, and groin sucks. Going back, he blabbered about how rude kids are nowadays and downright disrespectful to the older generation by talking back and stuff. Yeah, typical Asian culture. I didn't pay attention to him anymore while he's on full steam talking about his boomer supremacy lecture as I want to avoid any conflict within the client's premises. After his boomer TED talk, said the magic word that gave me an idea on how to shut him down for good. I will report you to your manager for disrespecting an essential supplier and not doing your job when you're told to. Since the pandemic is still lingering and face masks is a must, it sucks that he didn't see the evil grin on my face while walking towards him. I calmly got my wallet and didn't say anything. He looked at me confused as hell. I handed him my business card and told him that I am the manager. Also, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 30 and have my own business. I nodded and told him to have a nice day with the sweetest sarcastic voice. His face turned red and didn't say a thing. I heard some giggling and whispers between the employees that were unloading the boxes. I went back to where I was originally standing and waited for the client's engineer in peace. The next story is titled Lady Blocks Driveway, Then Gets Ticket. I came downstairs for ice cream earlier today, because ducked this heat wave, looked out the window and saw a car reversing into a space that only half the car actually fit into by the side of the road, going past the dropped curb and blocking part of the driveway. This lady gets out, and I'm like, okay, she's parking there, that's not good. I open the front door and call out to her. Excuse me, your car doesn't fit there. Lady looks at me. I just need to go to the shops. I'll only be 30 minutes, it's fine. I've heard this crap so many times. It's never just half an hour. No. My mum'll need to get into the driveway when she gets back from the shops, and you're blocking the driveway. Lady cuts me off. It's fine. She leaves, leaving her car blocking the drive. I figure I'm too tired for this crap, and if she's still there when my mum gets back, she can phone up the council. Sure enough, my mum gets back an hour later and the lady's car is still there. Guess who got a ticket? Lady comes back later and sits and huffs in her car. She then gets out and takes photos on her phone of the car, that was significantly past the dropped curb, and of my mum's number plate. I'm not sure what she's trying to accomplish. The traffic warden who gave her the ticket also took photos of her car, as they always have to do, but she's welcome to waste her time trying to dispute the ticket. Enjoy your fine for being too lazy to drive to any of the nearby car parks, lady. I hope it was worth it. The next story is titled I'm Not an Employee or a Therapist. One day, while back in college I had just left a school magazine photo shoot where we had to wear all black, so I was wearing black pants, shirt and shoes. I stopped at a Family Dollar on the way home. I was wandering the aisles trying to look for candles. While walking I kept seeing this woman in heels with a very vexed vibe about her. She was walking quickly and had a prominent scowl. Her heels clicked loudly all throughout the store. I eventually found the candles and was taking my sweet time smelling each one to decide what I wanted. The lady I saw before stomped into the aisle and I looked up at her for a second. I do not like talking to random strangers, especially seemingly angry ones, so I didn't say anything and continued smelling candles. But after a minute or so of her sighing and making disgruntled noises, she says, "I'm having such a crap day." I sheepishly say, "Oh, that sucks." She then says, "My boyfriend and I just bought a house together and I found out he's cheating. I found him with the idiot this morning. I was dumb to make such a big decision with a snake. I'ma throw all his stuff out, etc." I replied, "Damn, I'm sorry that happened to you." Feeling awkward and thinking the conversation had ended after some silence, I try to shimmy out of the aisle. She then says, "This place has coupons, right?" Confused I say, I don't know." She then angrily says, "Shouldn't you know? I mean, I saw it in the store's newspaper." Genuinely confused I say, "I don't know anything about that." She then starts again complaining about how she doesn't understand why I can't just help her. I tell her again more sternly I don't know what she's talking about. And she scoffs and walks off. It dawns on me after she walked away that she probably thought I worked there. But the thing is, I was in all black while the employee uniform at the time was a red t-shirt with the Family Dollar logo. Also, there's always an employee at the cash register at the entrance of this store that greets every customer that walks in. She would have seen what the employees wore when she walked in, or at least when she was stomping around the store. Sorry her boyfriend cheated, but she shouldn't take it out on me. The next story is titled Airbnb Karen. So, the house next door to me has been converted into luxury apartments, all of which are let via Airbnb. It's a large 3-story Georgian house. Access is via a key code on the door, which often causes problems for people who have not bothered to read their confirmation emails and assume that a human being will be there to greet them. On more than a few occasions, I've had to explain this to bewildered tourists. They are usually very polite. On one occasion I even gave a weary traveler, just off the plane from South Africa, a hotspot so he could retrieve the code from the app. Yesterday evening I was leaving my house, and the second I got out the door I was verbally accosted by a Karen standing outside the house next door, with what I assume was her poor unfortunate husband. She was in her mid-50s, I'd say, and although she wasn't dressed like a typical Karen, she certainly had the demeanor. Finally she exclaimed, before I'd even closed my door. "Sorry," I said, obviously looking surprised. She sounded American, I'm assuming not Canadian, as everyone knows how polite they are. "We've been waiting here for over an hour." A lie, as I'd only come home 30 minutes earlier. I've been ringing the doorbell and nobody's answering. "Oh," I said, "you trying to get into the Airbnb?" Trying to be polite. "Well, obviously. I need you to let me in immediately. This is not good enough." I can't do that. You need to enter the code on the keypad," I replied. "What code? I don't have time for that, just let me in. I don't have anything to do with the Airbnb, I just live next door to it." "You need to enter the code on the keypad." "What nonsense, you're just being lazy." Sylvia, her presumed husband, blurts out, acknowledging his existence for the first time, but is quickly shushed by his mistress. Losing my patience, I retorted, "Look lady, I don't work for the Airbnb. There is nobody there to let you in. You need to get the code they sent you and enter it in the keypad. Bye," and then stared to walk away fast as I see my bus approaching. "Get back here, young man. I pay your wages. I'll have you fired for this," was the last thing I heard. As I was regaling my friends with this tale in the pub, I wondered were they still standing there hours later, but when I got home they were nowhere to be seen. I guess I should expect a write-up from my non-existent manager in the morning. The next story is titled Oops, You Don't Work Here, Do You? So I went to Publix the other day. I hadn't gotten much sleep and was very groggy. I pretty much jumped right in my car and went to get groceries after waking up. Additionally, I ended up having a long, philosophical conversation with my brother in the parking lot of Publix, so by the time I actually get out of the car, not only am I tired, my mind is just elsewhere. I walk in the front door to the store and see a lady wearing a mask and wiping down one of the shopping cart handles. Now, for clarity, where I live, most people don't wear masks anymore unless they're working, because the numbers have just dwindled down to almost nothing. So, I assumed this lady was an employee, and as she finishes wiping down the handle, I walk up and put my hands on the side of the cart, about to turn around to push it inside. As soon as I laid my hands on it, she looks up at me, and I pause and look at her, and then it dawns on me she's wearing Mickey Mouse ears. She chuckled and said, "I don't work here." I immediately apologized and tried to laugh it off but was very embarrassed. Later, I ran into her again in the store, and I explained that I was out of it and not thinking clearly, and I don't usually see non-employees wiping the handles because the employees had been doing it for a while now. She informed me that they had stopped doing that a while back now and told me not to worry about it because it would be a funny story in hindsight. The next story is titled Mistaken at a Ross. I was at a Petco buying cat food and there was a Ross next door. I haven't been to a Ross in a long time, so I went inside to look around. I walked straight to the men's shoe section at the back and began looking at the shoes. A few minutes later, a woman came up to me and said, "Where are the kids' shoes?" Her English wasn't very good, so it took me a second to realize what she had said. I responded, "I don't know, this is first Ross I've been to in 4 years." I was very nice and said it in a light-hearted way. She just stared at me intensely for 5 long seconds, then said, "Where are the kids' shoes?" I furrowed my brow in confusion, and said, "I don't know." She stared at me for a few more seconds, then just walked away. I'm actually glad she asked me about the shoes. Even though I couldn't help her, she reminded me that I have been meaning to buy my son shoes for a few weeks now. I ended up getting him a nice pair for a decent price. On a side note, I followed a lady in who had obviously been hotboxing weed recently. I smelled the weed wafting off of her from 20 feet away. I'm not anti-weed, I'll even eat an edible every now and then, but she had a 3 or 4-year-old kid with her and I later saw her getting into the driver's seat. Some people just don't give a crap. The next story is titled Construction Champagne. In this tale I was the person assuming another shopper was an employee. New Year's Eve 2021. It was late, my fiancé's mother was in the hospital for over a week at that point, and I was tasked with acquiring champagne so we could have a little bit of celebration in the midst of a health emergency. I was wandering around a Target in New York State looking for champagne. I couldn't find it and I realized that maybe NY has different laws about where you can buy champagne. I don't live in NY so I don't know. I looked around for an employee and saw a woman wearing a construction hat, high-vis vest, steel-toe boots, and other construction PPE. My brain told me, this person is wearing a uniform, they must work here. Of course this doesn't make sense now, but at the time I had so many other things on my mind. I approached her and said, "Do you have any champagne?" She didn't react and I'm very soft-spoken, so I repeated my question loudly. She stared at me for a while, likely trying to understand what exactly was going on. In her mind I'm sure she thought there was no possible way I could mistake her for a Target employee. After some thinking, she responded, "Honey, I wish I did," then folded her arms and faced me. I should have figured it out then, but I didn't. I said, "Can you please help me find some? I can't find any." She responded, "Maybe an employee would know where to find some." It took a moment, but I got it. I smacked my head and apologized over and over. She just laughed at me as I walked away. I left Target and drove straight to the liquor store after that. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.